It's Talk of Iowa from IPR News. Today is Horticulture Day. I'm Dani Gehr in for Charity Nebbe. There are a lot of gardens in my neighborhood that I admire, but what in particular I really love to walk past, and it is filled with native plants. And I almost want to ring their doorbell and thank them for their service, for improving my walks so much. But when thinking about adding natives to your garden, it could be hard to know where to start. Iowa State University horticulturist Ray Kruse has gone through that trial and error for you, and Ray joins me now. Hey, Ray.
Hi, Dani. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, just spectacular.
Well, let's start by getting on the same page. How do you define native plants and nativars?
Sure. I feel that this is such a debated topic. I'm going to talk about the angle that I come at it from. For our garden, at our place, for me, native is basically native to North America. So that's my definition of native. Like over the past, hundreds of years, the lines as to where plants used to exist and now exist can vary. And so to me, like North America is pretty good if you wanna ask me. So that's my definition of a native plant. And then a native is a plant that is if you want to say cloned and is cloned for specific values. So, like there's many different types of switchgrass, and those are cloned because some are short, some are tall, and when you clone them, you can copy those desired characteristics. So to me, that's a native plant that we value for its horticultural characteristics, and we clone them. So
Well, tell me about your native plant garden. Where did it start and what does it look like now?
yeah, when I was in grad school, I went to grad school at Iowa State, graduated in 2015. I had no idea that native plants was going to be something that I was going to dive into. And then I met my wife, and then we were going to prairie conferences, and we were engaging with other people in native plant community and the prairie community. And I still had no idea that I was going to be this interested in native plants and having a garden. I've had a perennial garden growing up, but crossing the two was just never something I envisioned. And then now that my wife and I, we have a farm, and I have this wonderful position at the Dubuque County Extension Office, and we've been able to launch a program called Mowing to Monarchs. That program, which helps folks plant native plants in their backyard, has really gotten me to really take a deep dive into this and really, if you want to say, get nerdy with them. So
And what have you had success with this year?
sure. I've had an interest in grasses, if you want to say. I started collecting those, if you want to say, to start with, and those to me have pretty much been pretty foolproof ever since the get-go. One of my favorite grasses that always does well is something called northwood and switchgrass. It's very popular in garden centers, and that's just been a fun one. So that's one that's been doing really well for me. Another one that's been doing really well, and depends upon what size of garden you got, is cup plant. So we planted that 2 years ago, and boy, that has just taken off like crazy this year. It just looks gorgeous. The plant leaves are huge. We got these little puddles of water with all the rain that we're getting here in Dubuque recently. We got tons and tons of insects and birds that are visiting that for water. So it's been kind of cool to see those two plants specifically be really successful this year. So
Yeah, what hasn't lived up to expectations?
I really love asters, and so one of my favorite asters is New England asters. And so I've got two different kinds that are dwarfs. One's called Grape Crush, and another's called Purple Dome. And this year they look a little sad. So I don't know if it's the intense rains that we've got up here in Dubuque, or Dubuque County rather, that's causing some issues. They've got a little bit of disease at the base of the plant, which isn't uncommon, but I feel like it's uncommon for this early in the year. So those are
Mhm.
looking a little tough, even though they're one of my favorite plants.
How much time do you usually give a plant that's not quite hitting those expectations?
Oh gosh, that's a complicated question. So if it's like these New England asters, they're probably going to stay there unless they just don't bloom. But other plants that I have, if there's aggressive spreaders, so like we had, and this wasn't a native plant, but it was we call it like European windflower. It was snowdrop anemone, and we got it thinking it was a native, planted it, and we're doing some more research. Once we got it planted, we're like, oh, I guess that's actually a European, type of plant. But we're like, great, we're not going to hold it against the plant. But after 2 years of growing that and some very successful spreading by that plant, I'm like, you know what, that just can't be here anymore. It's just going to go crazy. So for 2 years after that, we're like, nope, nope, that one's got to go. So that one made room this year for new plants, we'll say. So
And with those aggressive spreaders, do you try and avoid them, or do you have advice for how to keep that spreading in check?
sure. So if it's a seed spreader, I'm a little more inclined to keep it because once the flowers dry out and have their glory, if you want to say, like you can remove them and control the spreading a lot easier. Like for example, I have some rattlesnake master, and I had no idea that that was going to spread as bad as it does if you don't remove the little balls on top, which are their flowers. So yeah, if you just cut those off, you save a lot of headaches. But like this European windflower that we had, that spread by roots, and that was very aggressive. And so when that's happening, I'm like, nope, that's got to go. So that's kind of my if it's spreading by roots, real aggressively, I'm more inclined to take it out, if you want to
Mm.
say. So
Now, there are a lot of environmental benefits with native plants. There's also, they require less water, less fertilizer. But what can people expect as far as maintenance? I understand that that doesn't mean you won't have a lot of work to do in your native garden.
sure, sure. So I like to view it as something as what you put in is what you get out. Um, and there's also other environmental factors that fact that's a very big question to answer. I'm sorry. So yeah, if you have a lot of bad weeds that are aggressive in your environment, such as like quackgrass or Canadian thistle, and you just plant some plants in there that you're like, you know what, I'm just going to walk away and let that do its thing, those really aggressive weeds are probably going to take over. And if you don't do any maintenance with it, so that's going to be something that you're going to have to revisit and spend a lot of time revamping when the time comes, even though you had these long spans of time where you didn't do anything. So there's that. For me, I'm out there weekly, and I originally planned this garden not to be that way, but here I am, like having a lot of interest in it, and just having so much fun observing them that I'm out there weekly where I'm like, that's got to get cut back, or we got to tuck a little bit more mulch in because we have some bare spots in the mulch or something like that. We don't want weeds. So I think that's a very open-ended question, but that's what I'm out there doing is a weekly round of care, if you want to say. But it is just one bed for me that I have, that I'm taking care of. So that's kind
Mhm.
of my what do you want to say, way of controlling that impulse, if you want to
Yeah.
say.
When you are out there checking out your garden, what other observations are you trying to make?
Sure. So I'm really fond of plants that have a long, if you want to say, a life and don't require that annual replant in this prairie garden, if you want to say. So I'm kind of evaluating like how are they growing and things like that. I have this type of a little blue stem that I purchased last year, and I know it was overwintered in the pot at the nursery that I bought it from. So I knew that, and it was already a little stunted, but I planted it last fall, never took off, and now it's back this spring, which I'm glad it made it through the winter, but it is just not taken off. So even though I'm not really worried about it spreading badly, I just don't think it's going to last long term. So I'm just constantly evaluating that. I'm also looking for disease. So something that has really surprised me is I have these false sunflowers, and they seem really bulletproof throughout the summer. Like they have good shape, good form, and everything like that. But just something odd that's happened with them is over the course of like 2 or 3 days, they'll just up and die. And I don't know whether it's a disease that they got or what, but I had that happen to a fall sunflower I purchased from a nursery last year, and it was just gorgeous. And then by the end of July, I just noticed it wilting one day, and then 2 days later, it was completely toast. And I was like, well,
Mm.
that was quick. So yeah, I'm looking for those things. Um, when I'm inside the house, because I have our perennial garden, our prairie garden, right outside of our house, outside of our picture window. So we look at it at every meal we eat at the kitchen table. And so we see a fair number of birds, and that's been exciting. This year I've seen my first oriole. So that's been cool. And this year we have a fair number of goldfinches hanging around too. So
So you don't run out of stuff to observe in the garden.
no, no. And I never thought that I would see as many benefits to this as what I do, but a lot of folks have their landscaping up against the walls of their house or the foundation. And our house is not the way our house sits on the landscape. It's not really viewable from the road or when you drive up to our garage to enter the front door. You can't really see much of the landscaping. And so I was like, well, why have that if I just can't enjoy it? So we don't really have any landscaping, at the base of our house, and we just put the perennial bed out in the center of the grass. And so, like, when we sit down, like I said, we eat a meal or something like that, we're always looking outside at that garden and what's going on next, even in the middle of winter. And it's been exciting. The beard tongues, they have this kind of evergreen look to them in the deep of winter. So that's fun to observe. Where there's these random plants that just have life to them when everything else is barren. So, yeah.
Iowa State University horticulturist Ray Kruse. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our garden variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Dani Gehr. We're back with Talk of Iowa from IPR News. It's Horticulture Day. I'm Dani Gehr filling in for Charity Nebbe. As always, you can join the conversation with your plant questions, 866-780-9100, or email talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. I've been speaking with Ray Kruse, Iowa State Extension horticulturist, and joining the conversation, ISU Extension horticulturist Aaron Steil. Hello, Aaron.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tell me, what is bringing you joy in the garden right now?
Oh, I think right now the summer bloomers are just looking so nice. I have daylilies coming into bloom. I have bee balm coming into bloom. All my hostas are coming into bloom. Coral bells, like we're getting that summer flush, and it's just so nice to see all that color this time of year.
Yeah, it's just so lovely seeing it all come together. And Ray, I didn't get a chance to ask you in the first segment, but you love asters, and I was curious, what do you love about them?
Well, I just find them cool in the diversity that there is in one species. And if you look at like across our landscape and all the different native plants, amazing to see how many are related to the asters. So I just find them to be really cool and how diverse they are, and how many different growing conditions that they will actually tolerate. So that's just what's fun. And they can come in different colors too. And yeah, I just think that there's a lot of potential with them.
That's your pitch to try out some asters. Let's get to some questions. Sheila in Sioux City's up first. She wrote about her fern. She wants to know, it was tiny when we first got it. She writes about 7 years ago. The pot now is jam-packed. Can she repot it in a bigger container, or will it die, or can they split it up? The bottom leaves are starting to die off more than normal.
I'm wondering if this is like a Boston fern, especially considering it's been in a container for a while. And they do spread like crazy. They do get quite large. And often over time, the center dies out too. And so you can pull these out of the container, divide them into smaller pieces, and replant them just at the same height that they were in the container. It helps get rid of that dead center. It helps kind of keep it from there's always a lot of dead material in it, so you can help kind of clean that out too. And it might be a little floppy at first after you replant it, but especially with the heat of summer, it will recover very quickly. But you will have to water regularly, and it probably wouldn't mind a little bit of fertilizer. Boston fern in particular really responds well to fertilizer.
I hope that helps, Sheila. She sent a picture. It looks gorgeous. There's just a little browning at those bottom leaves, but
yeah.
I hope you're able to divide it successfully. We also, and you can join the conversation too, 866-780-9100. Go send emails to talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. I have a question from Ace from Waterloo. He asks, how can I help my city government learn about the benefits of native plants? Are there pilot programs in Iowa towns?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because in Dubuque County, we have a program called Mowing to Monarchs. Our county conservation is really the leader with that program because they deal with all the financials and the program administration, that type of stuff. But the Master Gardeners in Dubuque County, I help coordinate that community, and they really are a huge volunteer force with that program. And we've seen tons and tons of benefits from that. We have a lot of information, or I shouldn't say a lot. All of the program information is available on our Dubuque County website. So if you're looking to find more information about the community impacts that we have, they're pretty compelling. We have a one-pager that we have that's downloadable. And also, too, I'm not real well-versed on all of the City of Dubuque regulations, but from my understanding, there have been some regulations that have been rolled back to allow for more pollinator plantings in like the boulevard area between the sidewalk and the street. So a little bit of a loosening of those restrictions to allow for more native plantings just because of the interest that we've had in the community from them.
That's awesome. And Aaron, anything in central Iowa that you know about?
I think just in general, when you're going to community leaders, coming forward with successful projects like the one in Dubuque County can be a really great way not only to convince folks, but then to have the exact roadmap that you can replicate it yourself potentially. So I think those can be really powerful tools if that's a goal that you have.
All right, let's go to the phones. We have a call from Amanda in Urbandale. Hey, Amanda.
Hi.
What question do you have for us?
I have 2 rows of Sharon. One's in my front yard and doing fine. One's in my backyard, and they were planted about the same time. The one in the backyard, it's alive, but it is not got any blooms on it. And when I plant, I amend the soil. I just fertilized it with fish emulsion, and I did at the time of planting, but I'm a little perplexed.
Yeah, so Rose of Sharon is certainly a plant that is kind of touch and go in a lot of Iowa. Like, they can be incredibly successful in certain spots, like little microclimates, and then in other areas they don't survive the winter. And so I'm wondering, too, if there's just enough differences between the front and the backyard where the one in the front has everything that it needs to be really successful, and the one in the back is maybe struggling just a little bit because of maybe there's more shade, maybe the soil is heavier, maybe it's more exposed. I don't know the exact situation, but I think you're doing the right things to help this plant along. I wouldn't fertilize any more this summer. It's pretty hard on plants to fertilize when they go into a really stressful part of the year. And for most plants, summer is fairly stressful because of the heat and less irrigation and those kinds of things. But usually Rosa Sharon really does take off in the summer. And so even if it's a little bit behind, if you're keeping it happy, I would expect it to catch up in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. One difference is it's on a slope in the back.
Mm-hmm.
The other is it does get sun, but the front is in sun almost all day. The back has some shade.
Yeah.
But
and that
not
would
all
probably
day. It gets late sun.
Sure. That would probably account for the slower to come to bloom situation. I mean, I've had Rosa Sharon in shady areas, and it grows fine, but it does bloom less, and it does bloom later as a result. So the one in full sun's living it up, so it's going to be in bloom faster than one that has a little bit less. So I think that's still a condition where the plant can be successful. It's just going to be on a different time frame.
Thanks for the call, Amanda. You can join the conversation, 866-780-9100. You can send an email to talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. I have Ann on the line now in Cedar Rapids. Hey, Ann.
Hi there. We have dozens of hostas, which I just love, but I do not like the flowering stems. What are the pros and cons of leaving the stems to the flowering stem or just cut it off? Of which is better?
You can do either. There really is no drawback to cutting the flower off from the plant's perspective. If you don't like the flowers, cut them off as soon as you see them, no problem. The flowers can be nice for some pollinators. Hummingbirds sometimes visit hosta flowers depending on how big they are. They're definitely a favorite for bees. And so in that sense, keeping the flowers around is a pro, but if you don't like the look for them, just cut them off. It's really, the plant doesn't really see any negative impact from it, and if you like that look better, I don't think it's any problem at all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the call, Ann. Next up, we have Joan in Iowa City. Hey, Joan.
Hello.
What question do you have?
I love your show. I have about 10 chipmunks as I look in the backyard all the time, and they're digging up everything in my pots and my zinnias. What is the recourse? They are propagating probably every other week.
You know, I'm chuckling because I have the same battle in my own yard. Those little creatures, man, they're cute, but they can cause a lot of mess. Typically, and this is true for most animal issues, exclusion is the best way to avoid this. And so you can put up, like early in the season, after I just planted my containers, I actually had a chicken wire dome over them. Now that it's later, I took it off because the plants are getting bigger. One of the other things that I've done in the past, especially in containers that can help a lot, is to put like river rock or some kind of stone on the soil surface to discourage the digging. And it still lets water through, and the plants are there just for the season anyway, so I'm not worried about them like crowding out the plants or anything like that. And it can really help keep the digging down. I do the same thing for cats that get into house plants. It works well for squirrels and chipmunks in containers. So that's probably where I would start. But if you have other ideas in terms of hardware cloth, chicken wire fencing, like those are the things that work the best to exclude them from the area or to deter them or prevent them from digging so that they don't dig up all those plants, make all the mess, expose the root system so they dry out and those kinds of things.
Joan, you said right now. So are you watching these chipmunks cause havoc while you're on the phone right now?
I certainly am.
You're reporting live from the scene. I'm so sorry. It must feel so helpless.
And my daughter's got them too, and they're destroying the wall that she's got. You know, they have all these, the gravel, they destroy a lot of the cement that people have as well.
Yeah, the digging and those kinds of things can be really destructive too. And like in garden areas, laying hardware cloth over the areas where they're problematic can help reduce the digging too. And hopefully you can kind of keep them out of the area and have them established somewhere else. A little bit joking, a little bit not joking. The other thing that helps a lot with chipmunks are stray cats. So, if you have something there to help support stray cats, that might help too.
Well, sorry, Joan, I cut you off. What was that? Oh, I didn't put her on the line. Hey, Joan, sorry about that. We can hear you now. Well, thank you for the call. We'll go on to the next caller now. I hope some of that helps. Next, we have Dave in Waterloo. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I moved here after living near Yellowstone for 20 years. I came back home again 3 years ago, and since I've been back here, I've been turning my backyard into a garden, and I like to use organic mulch. So I've been going out and buying, trying to find spoiled hay, but that seems to be a problem from local farmers. But I end up buying hay that's a couple of years old, and I had pretty good luck with it until this year. And this year I'm finding I'm getting some leaf curl. And so I'm curious as to whether there could be some herbicide residue that's on some of that hay that I'm buying, or if just the fact that Iowa uses a lot of herbicides, that I could be getting some drift from wherever.
Sure. I actually have personal experience with that because hay is what I use in my own gardens because I grow it on my farm. So I know where it comes from, and I can use that. And what you're expressing in terms of concern is totally appropriate. And you're right, there could be some carryover of some herbicide in that, but additionally, it depends on the plants you're seeing the herbicide damage on or potential herbicide damage on. I've seen a lot of drift this year from other targeted herbicide applications away from the site. So I've seen a lot of that off-target, effect on folks' gardens outside of the field or road ditch, or a neighbor's yard or something like that. So it may not be coming from the mulch itself, even though it could be a possibility, but it also could be something that is just wafting over from a neighbor's yard or a road ditch or something like that. So it could be a multitude of things. It's hard to narrow that down.
One of the things you could do is you could do a little science experiment at home. If you get 2 containers, put potting soil in both, and mix some of the mulch in with the potting soil in one of them, and plant like a handful of bean seeds in both containers. Bean tends to be pretty sensitive to some of the commonly used herbicides, and if there is any carryover herbicide in that mulch, the beans in the pot that have it will show those symptoms, and the ones in the pot that doesn't won't. And so that can be a little science. And beans germinate in like a week, so it doesn't take too long for you to make the determination.
Thanks for the call, Dave. You can join the conversation, 866-780-9100. You can send email to talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. We had an email question from Diane in DeWitt who said, I planted a clover thyme fescue mix on my bare lot in 2024. The clover was beautiful the first year. Now weeds, including sour dock and ragweed, have taken over. Because the lot is in a flood plan, 11 feet of fill was added before building. The whole area is mostly sand, ergo I don't have a good base for whatever I plant. My neighbor to the north, a very kind gentleman, is losing his mind over my collection of weeds butting up against his perfect lawn. Clover is not the answer. I thought about bird's foot trefoil, and it is invasive, as are many of the other plants I've researched. I've thought about a fescue mix. I've thought about thyme. What do I plant in my herbicide-free lawn?
Yeah, this is a challenging situation. Usually, if you have exceptional drainage, thyme would probably do well in that. That's not a native plant, but it's also not an aggressive taking over kind of plant. I would be interested in seeing how self-heal does in this situation. That is been a plant that I've seen some good success with in lawn-type settings. That's also native. And so it has pretty blue flower. It spreads pretty well, which is something we want in this situation. So look into some of those. Look into bee lawns and what they're using in those, and see if you can find some other things to try.
We're going to take a short break. ISU horticulturists Aaron Steil and Ray Kruse are here to answer your questions. 866-780-9100. Back in just a moment. I'm Dani Gehr. Back with more Talk of Iowa from IPR News. It's still Horticulture Day. I'm Dani Gehr filling in for Charity Nebbe. ISU Extension horticulturists Aaron Steil and Ray Kruse are here to answer your questions. Call 866-780-9100 or send email talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. Let's jump back into the phones. We have Lori in Ankeny joining us now. Hey, Lori.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my call.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your question?
I have a prairie garden, and I have false indigo baptisia. It's the first year I've ever seen a pest on it, and I'm trying to decide if it's a greenhouse thrip or actually I spent a lot of time on AI trying to identify this bug, and it said there's one specific lace bug to baptisia, and it doesn't really look like the greenhouse thrip. I'm thinking it's a lace bug, but I don't know.
Yeah, so I would say just having a description over the radio isn't super helpful, and I'm not super familiar with all the pests that you could see on baptisia. So I would say, if you contact your local extension office with some photos, we do talk, if you want to say behind the scenes, if we don't know what it is, we can talk with other horticulturists across the state and with our state entomologists in Ames and see if we get that properly identified if you're really curious. I'm sorry, I don't really know a ton about all the insects that are on baptisia to just know from a phone description.
Mm-hmm. But good to have those resources. So, Lori, I hope you get to the bottom of it. Next, we have Herman in Nashua. Hey, Herman.
Hey, how you guys doing? Doing good, I hope.
Great. Thanks so much for calling.
Oh, you bet. Well, I'm from Nashua, Iowa. I'm an old chicken farmer, and every so often we get a lot of sprouts of thistles, and I've got a lot of free range chickens. They kind of roam around the yard there, and I'm getting pretty old, so it's hard to pick them off out of the ground. I just don't want the chickens to eat the thistles too much, but I was wondering, maybe you guys have a good way of, is there anything I can put on the thistles either to get rid of them, and if the chickens do peck at them a little bit, they won't hurt them, or what? Maybe I ought to sell a bunch of chickens.
Yeah, so I have personally a lot of experience managing thistles, if you want to say. Do you know, are these thistles Canadian thistles? Or are they some other type of thistle?
Well, they got kind of a reddish tint to some of them. They're tall ones, I can tell you that. They grow quick. Boy, they sprout up quite quickly.
Okay. Because I was going to say, most of our thistles are biennials. So, if you control their seed production and keep them mowed and prevent them from setting seed, that's a good way to try and prevent them in the future years. Now, there may be a seed bank built up or something like that in the soil.
I think so.
Yeah, that could have you at a disadvantage. Now, if they're Canadian thistles, oh boy, trying to eradicate those in a way without herbicides is very, very difficult. You could try different ways to set them back, but I think your goals are probably to try and eradicate them. And I don't know many other options other than herbicides to get rid of that aggressive of a thistle. So Does that answer your question, or are you looking for more detail?
Yeah, they do. No, I think that's about right. Describe the Canadian one real quick. Is it tall?
Relative to the other thistles, they get tall as well, but they've got a thinner stem than the other thistles. So like bull and musk thistles have a very thick stem. And I would say that they have a much larger flower than the Canadian thistles, which are more like the width of your index finger, if you want to say. And that's just my description. But yeah, the flowers of the other thistles are usually a bit larger, like maybe the widths of two of your thumbs or something like that.
Thanks so much for the call, Herman, and best of luck with those chickens. Next, we have Kathy on the line in Fairfield. Hey, Kathy.
Hi. Hey, I have 5 peony bushes in my yard. 4 of them bloom like crazy. They have been beautiful the last couple of years. And the 5th one gets all the little buds on it for flowers, the little round balls. But as they start to open, they just get brown and crumply and they don't bloom. And I just wondered if you had any ideas what was causing that and what I could do to help them bloom in the next year.
Are all of these plants in the same location, or are they kind of sprinkled throughout?
They're sprinkled throughout.
Okay. So
they're fairly close. They're around. I have a pergola, and they're around the pergola. There's probably at least 5 to 10 feet in between each one.
Okay. So I suspect there's botrytis is something that sometimes will cause symptoms like this, and peonies do have a couple of different disease challenges, especially when they're growing in less than ideal situations. And for a peony, less than ideal is too much shade. If this area, maybe it was in full sun and after many years it's not anymore, or maybe this area gets a little bit less sun than the other ones, they would be more prone to this potentially. Good fall cleanup makes a big difference for this one. And so getting in there and after the foliage has died back and getting it out of that area, not composting it, just disposing of it, whether you dig a pit and put it in or you put it in the trash, whatever it might be, but getting it out of that area. And if they are in less than 6 hours of direct sun a day, giving them a move to a sunnier location would likely help too. And actually, if you are thinking about doing that, August and early September is the best time to move a peony. So you would have the perfect opportunity yet this year.
Okay. All right. We'll see. I think they do get a lot of sun, all of them. So
Okay,
I don't
good.
think that's an issue, but I will try removing the dead stuff in September this year.
Yeah.
See if that helps.
Thanks for the call, Kathy. Next, we have Dave on the line in Hamilton County. Hey, Dave.
Hey, what I've got is I've got CRP ground running parallel to Interstate 35, and the right-of-way for the interstate has got a lot of wild parsnip in it, and it's starting to move out of there into my CRP, which is beautiful wildflowers. Obviously, I can't spray it. What are my options?
So with that one, the main thing that I would do is to try and control seed production. So wild parsnip is a biennial, so it starts off in the fall as a rosette, as a plant that doesn't produce a flower. It overwinters in the soil, and then it emerges next spring and shoots up the stalk of seed that we see now. If you don't allow those seed stalks to generate seeds, that to me would be the best approach to try and limit that in encroaching in on your CRP. And I don't know if you're allowed to do mowing or anything like that in the CRP. You'd have to talk with your local NRCS office as to what your contract will allow. But that would be an approach that I would take, especially if you're looking for an herbicide-free option to kind of protect the rest of the wildflowers and native plants.
All right. Thanks for the call, Dave. Next, we have Jim in Hudson. Hey, Jim.
Hello.
What question do you have?
I'm working in with the Lions Club working on a pollinator garden in downtown. And I had some volunteer people that volunteer to share their gardens with me. Anyway, in the spring, I had some people call and said they had some call them blanket flowers that are pretty, but they're invading a flower bed of theirs that they've got some in there, but now they're not where they want them anymore. So they said, come and get them. So I called them in the spring, and they said, well, we don't know where they are right now. So they called me the other day and said, now they're in bloom, and I want them moved out of my garden. So I've came and collected them, where the ones they didn't want, and I'm wondering how to plant and care for these and if I can keep them going in my pollinator garden.
So blanket flower, this is a pretty stressful time to move any perennial. And so the best thing to do would be to make sure you keep up on the watering for these plants. Thankfully, blanket flower doesn't mind being a little on the dry side anyway, and so that will work in its favor. But checking at least a couple times a week and watering if the soil is dry will be really important for this first growing season. Next year, they'll probably be fine, but because we're going into a hot, dry period, the regular watering when it's needed. I mean, you don't want to drown them or water them if the soil is already wet, but chances are it won't be as wet as it would be in the spring. And so that regular irrigation would be probably the single most beneficial thing you could do. Mulch will help to making sure you're keeping rabbits and things off of them would help, of course, all those things. But the watering will be your number one task for the rest of the summer.
Best of luck, Jim. I hope that pollinator garden turns out beautiful. We have a question from Jean in rural Dallas County. She asks, is quackgrass the aggressive spreader with long white roots that sometimes go deep? It is running under so many of my perennials. How can this be controlled or at least repressed?
So that is me and quackgrass have a history, and so yes, you are right. That is the weed or whatever, if you want to say that can invade a perennial garden. And in my opinion, can lead to its demise in a way because it just takes over. I in my perennial garden prefer not to use herbicides, so I have a 1.5 foot border on the inside of the landscape stone from my grass that I monitor its encroachment. So anytime it sneaks underneath that landscape block and I see it poke up in the first 1.5 foot before it reaches my collection of perennials in the center, I'd be sure to yank it out. And that's been my control tactic. So it's a hard one to monitor, and you have to constantly keep an eye on it.
I hope that helps, Jean. Thanks for the question. Next, we have Michelle in Walters, Minnesota. Hey, Michelle.
Hi. My question is about my rose bushes. This year, the leaves are getting yellow, and it's from the outside in, and it's the older leaves. And it sends up new canes, but those are really weak and they fall over. And it's blooming like crazy, like trying to, I'm not sure. And I can't find any bugs on it. Last year I had a little trouble with spider mites, and I just took a garden hose and sprayed it, and it seemed to take care of it, and they were fine. But this year, that's not working. So.
Yeah. What you're describing sounds a lot like a very common rose disease called black spot. And it does start lower on the outer side of the plant. You get kind of yellowing spots. They eventually get a black center. Eventually, they coalesce together. The leaf falls off, and it kind of moves up the plant throughout the growing season. It is a very common disease on rose, and it will leave the rose if it's really bad, it will leave it leafless by the end of the season. And sometimes you'll even have these beautiful flowers and just like hardly a leaf on the plant, which of course isn't terribly attractive. Some years are worse than others. It depends on weather, primarily, if it's going to be a bad year or an easier year. I'm not sure what things were like up in Minnesota. For much of the state here, we had quite a bit of rain in April and again in June. And that would definitely promote this disease more than drier conditions would, which we've seen a little bit more of in previous years. So that may account for why you're seeing this disease this year, and you may not have seen it as much in previous years, or when we do see it, it comes on later in the season, and so isn't as impactful. Mulching helps with this. Removing the really badly infected foliage and getting it out of the garden helps with this too. To get it completely under control, you use a fungicide, and you would be spraying fungicide every 7 to 14 days, which stinks. So you can either deal. It's not likely to take the plant out, this disease alone, but it does make it quite unattractive. There are some varieties of roses that are more resistant to this disease, that are less likely to get it. Many of the newer cultivars that are released, because this is such a prevalent disease, those cultivars are naturally resistant to black spot. And so if it becomes a perennial problem, you can replant with a shrub that's more likely to not get the disease, and that can help too. Otherwise, there's not much we can do about it. It's a pretty common thing, and you can let it be and have an ugly plant, or you can try to manage some of it by not getting foliage wet, by overhead watering, using mulch, removing heavily infested leaves, and that can help slow it quite a bit.
Best of luck, Michelle. We have a question from Lynn in Iowa City who writes, on my supposedly reblooming iris, should I cut down the flower stalk after the first bloom?
Oh, yeah, you can do that. And that would actually help, because then the plant will spend more time creating another flower stalk than trying to create a seed inside the pod. So overall, you should have better flowering the second round.
And once again, we're at the end of a horticulture day. We're so excited when it gets here, and suddenly it's over. Well, Aaron Steil, ISU Extension horticulturist, thank you so much for joining us again.
You're welcome.
Ray Kruse, Iowa State Extension horticulturist, thank you as well.
Thanks for having me.
Talk of Iowa is produced by Sam McIntosh and Caitlin Troutman. Our production assistant is Nev Kelly. Our executive producer is Catherine Perkins. We received technical support from Tony Sarabia today. I'm Dani Gehr. Thanks so much for joining. Charity Nebbe will be back next week.